Hey there guys, and thanks for joining me today on this comparison video between War Thunder and IL-2 Cliffs of Dover. I'll be looking at 4 categories here, and first we'll take a look at the graphics of both games, followed by the audio, the physics, and lastly some general gameplay aspects. I'll have a total of 4 stars to give away, so let's get started on the graphics. We'll take a look at the detail inside of the cockpits, as well as the outside of the aircraft and the surrounding terrain. Let's start with War Thunder on this. War Thunder is obviously a newer game, so we're safe to assume that most of the graphics will look better in this game. Cockpits look nice and detailed. One of the great things about War Thunder is that the pilot is rendered. You can see him while you're sitting inside of the craft, including all of the hand movements that you would expect from the joystick and the throttle. And of course, you can also see that the flaps are moving here, as well as inside as outside of the cockpit. And this is really nice. So let's take a look at some of the externals. The planes have great textures to them. They have a nice shine onto them. Glass reflects the light, and overall, it looks very well polished. Another thing from War Thunder that is really exciting is the terrain. The maps are large and very detailed. There's trees, there's houses, there's roads. Everything is different and detailed. Often enough, you know, when you're playing multiplayer, you want to kind of just fly around and enjoy the scenery, but there isn't always that much time for it. So unfortunately, you can't do that. But you know, what you can do is go into free flight and enjoy the scenery there for a little bit. Now let's pop into Cliffs of Dover for a bit and let's take a look at the same aspects. So here's the cockpit, and you do seem that there's a bit more detail to them. The dials seem to be a bit more accurate and less generic. The graphics, however, do look more dull. The pilot is not visible, unfortunately. And if you look at the joystick moving here as well as the throttle, it's a bit jerky and there seems to be a weird lag to it. You can see the same thing on the flaps. If you look on the outside of the wing there, it's a bit weird. Now, the external textures are also lacking a bit of detail. I suppose this is looking good for a game that was released in 2012, again, but it's definitely not as good as War Thunder. It's just a bit more generic. Now, the terrain as well is more generic, more blocky, boring trees, and the transition to water just looks a bit off. It's all just a bit more plain, a bit less detailed. So we've got 1 star to give away here, and this one most definitely goes to War Thunder. So let's move on to the audio. War Thunder does a good job at various different sounds in the game. There's plenty of different plane and gun sounds, but I do have to mention that none of them sound particularly awesome. As an example, the gear and the flap sounds are generic and identical for all the planes. Now this is where Cliffs of Dover does a really good job. Engine sounds inside of the cockpit is loud and wild, and when an airplane flies overhead, the sound gives a real good sense of an actual plane flying overhead. Now the gun sounds, that's something to talk about. These are really, really good in Cliffs of Dover. Just listen to it. Now we've got another star to give away here, and this one definitely goes to Cliffs of Dover, despite the fact that War Thunder also does a really good job at making some solid sounds. Next up is something we're all curious about, of course, something that's hard to test and does depend on what settings you use as well as what joystick you use. So for this test, I'm using the most realistic settings available to both games, using the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro joystick. So first let's take off with War Thunder. Now let's do the same thing with Cliffs of Dover. Now let's take a look at a landing in War Thunder. As you can see, the entire movement is quite smooth, perhaps a little bit too smooth. Cliffs of Dover is definitely more violent, and I must say that extending the flaps, for example, in Cliffs of Dover you get a really good sense of the weight and the drag. It's, you know, it feels like you're actually inside of the plane a lot more than with War Thunder. Let's do some extreme turns and see how these planes handle stalls. First, War Thunder. Now let's do the same thing with Cliffs of Dover. Here's a flat spin in War Thunder. And here's another flat spin, but in Cliffs of Dover. What can I say? Both games do a good job at getting the physics right, but Cliffs of Dover gives a lot more feedback by throwing the head around, you know, it's a bit jerky, and the aircraft does seem to display a more realistic result when pulling on the joystick, for example. When you're pulling too hard, it does feel better in Cliffs of Dover. Not to discredit the excellent job War Thunder does at portraying realistic flight physics, because it does a really good job as well. Here's another star for Cliffs of Dover. So both games have shown remarkable results for these tests. Let's take a look at some overall gameplay mechanics. Cliffs of Dover is a game around single player mostly, fighting AI in various campaign modes, for example. You can also play online, but you do require an active group of friends, for example, and there isn't a good jumping straight into a match-made game. And of course, this is where War Thunder excels. A matchmaking system that allows you to jump into any aircraft you own and then just join a game and play against other people or play with your friends, join up a squad. That is obviously a really nice feature from War Thunder. Now, War Thunder as well has a huge amount of aircraft that can be flown, while Cliffs of Dover focuses on only a couple of British and German planes. Of course, it is called Cliffs of Dover, so, you know, that's an understandable fact. Now, here's a bit of gameplay for you from both games. Just take a look at it and let's find out which game receives the last star. Now the last star definitely goes to War Thunder, and that leaves us with a tie on who is actually the better game here. I'm gonna say it, I don't think there is a better game, and both excel at what they're good at. They both have pros and cons, and when you weigh everything up, I'm going to say that in the end, War Thunder is the game to go and look for if you want a good online experience. And if you want a bit more of a realistic experience and you're okay with looking for a group of friends to get together with, and that's okay for you, of course there's the poorer graphics. If you're okay with that, then Cliffs of Dover is the game for you. Me, personally, War Thunder is the game for me. Alright guys, so I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have any comments in regard to War Thunder or Cliffs of Dover, do let me know. Write a comment below. Don't forget to share this with your friends. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will make sure to get more of these videos your way. Thanks for watching, and see you later.